On the line, we have our fantasy NASCAR expert. It's Sean Engel to talk Daytona 500.
You get the same last name?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Any relation?
Yes. Good morning, Sean. These guys want to know why you have the same last name as me.
Well, we have the same last name because we're all related. I mean, it's in our blood after all.
Yes. So let's talk a little Daytona 500 here.
Wait, where's his hat's not on the graphic, huh?
No, he's the fantasy ace with the hat.
Yeah,
yes.
his hat's not on the phone graphic.
Yeah,
though.
we
gotta Photoshop one of those in.
Yeah, we got to Photoshop a hat in.
A
yeah,
top
definitely.
hat and a monocle.
Yeah. What's your favorite hat to wear on screen, Sean?
I usually like going with the fedora. It'd be nice if you could Photoshop that in.
All right, so let's talk about the Daytona 500. Is it just a matter of, especially for somebody who's maybe new at this like Nando, is it just about locking Dale Earnhardt Jr. in and going with him? Dan Dobish recommends him on his preview right now on RotoExperts. He won the duel last night. That was his. That was his fifth dual win behind just Jeff Gordon, who has 6, and Dale Earnhardt Sr., who had 12. He just dominates at Daytona. Is it just a matter of, like, building everything around Junior?
Well, I usually think you should at least have a few lineups built around him, but I would also at least have some lineups built around some other drivers too, because remember during the Sprint Unlimited, he actually didn't even do that well due to the result of, I believe it was an accident.
Right.
So you may want to have some other drivers on lockdown too.
Well, so what are some of the other drivers? I mean, you got Joey Logano, who made a push last night to almost beat Junior. Has won the Daytona 500. Doesn't have a good history, but with these Penske type cars and Joe Gibbs Racing, you can never count them out. So if you're not going to build your lineup around Junior, who do you do it to?
I would suggest either Kyle Busch or Denny Hamlin.
Why?
That's because, I mean, Denny Hamlin won the Sprint Unlimited and Kyle Busch won the other dual race. Both of them have been pretty strong performers at this track, especially Hamlin because he's had 2 restrictor plate victories within the last 8 races of restrictor plate tracks, which is one of the best stats out there in terms of the Sprint Cup Series at the moment.
Now you look at this restrictor plate.
I like by the way how you got the southern. You both have the southern thing going on now. It's Kyle Busch.
Yeah,
it's Kyle Busch.
It's
When
Kyle
you watch
Busch.
NASCAR, it comes in naturally.
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be Kyle Busch.
But you know what though? Sean lived 8 years in Florida, and when he was younger, he used to say "yup" when we used to ask him a question. So maybe that has something to do with it.
Probably. It's cool beans.
Yeah, it's cool beans.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. He can still do it.
Like the guy from what is the auction show on A&E,
right?
Yes. What is it, Auction Hunters, Storage Wars?
It's Storage Wars.
Was that it? Whatever it is. That guy who's
Pawn
at
Shop?
Yup all the time.
Isn't it Pawn Stars?
I don't know.
Is that right?
I think we're
I
thinking
don't
of
watch
different
that
shows.
show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought he watches everything.
I
But
watch a lot.
we talk about restrictor plate racing. A wreck can happen at any time, Sean, here, and you got to be careful. It's like in when you play daily fantasy NASCAR, like on DraftKings, any driver wrecking can really put your team out of a tournament at any time. Are there some drivers who are just safer than others here?
Yeah, I certainly think so. There's drivers like Austin Dillon, who's been very consistent at these types of tracks. Within the last 7 restrictor plate races, or rather the last 8, he's been finishing in the top 20. So he's been a very consistent finisher in terms of Daytona and Talladega. I mean, I try to include the Talladega stats in there too because they're very similar tracks when you look at it. So it only makes sense in order to actually throw the stats for both tracks here too.
Now, looking at some of the guys you might want to spend less money on, Brian Vickers is healthy again. He's in Tony Stewart's ride. I liked Brian Scott at only 6,100 on DraftKings, but then, he got in a mishap last night in the duels, and he's going to start towards the back of the pack. And some of these guys, like Ryan Blaney, had a really good run both in the Sprint Unlimited and in last night's duel, and he's starting high in the field, but that could also mean he drops back. Do you avoid Blaney and say Ty Dillon, and there are some other lower-ranked drivers that you may like a Vickers?
I do like Ryan Blaney because he's been a solid, consistent performer when it comes to these types of tracks. But there are other drivers you can pick for that spot too, such as, like you said, Brian Vickers or even Ty Dillon or even Casey Mears as well, because before he actually ran out of fuel, he was running really well in the second duel. So I think he's definitely got the stats to back it up, too, especially with, I believe it was 3 top 10 finishes at Daytona. So there's definitely options to go around, especially at Daytona.
Let me speak for the common people here.
Thank you.
Ooh, wasn't Danica Patrick somehow involved in this? Is she racing? Or no?
Yeah, Danica is racing this week.
I remember you talking about her on the duels on the show. That's why I remember you mentioned her name. Is she not a favorite for this?
She did wreck, but Sean, what's your outlook for Danica Patrick in this race? Nando wants to know.
I think Danica is going to be an okay pick. I think she's not going to be up there by the end of this thing unless a lot of other drivers wreck, but I think she's going to just play it safe throughout the race until the end.
Sean, is that bad? I mean, is that like a bad strategy? Just if someone's going to be like, okay, is it someone I mean, I know it's depending on the price if you're playing in a daily fantasy NASCAR league, but is she more like a stay away with little upside?
She does have a little upside, but I think there's better picks you could put in place of Danica before putting Danica in.
What about Chase Elliott, who became the youngest driver to take the pole, 20 years old, and his father, Bill Elliott, as we get another father-son thing here, he won twice the Daytona 500. But the problem with Chase Elliott is if he's on the pole, and a lot of people who may be seeing that for the first time think, oh, he's going to lead some laps, this guy could actually drop like a rock. And is Chase Elliott somebody to avoid in the Daytona 500?
I certainly think so. He just starts way too high for my liking.
Yeah, it's all. And
what does that mean, though? You start way too high for your liking. What does that mean?
Are people not good front runners?
I'm basically saying if he starts up in the pole position, this is his first Daytona 500. Yeah, he may be with an experienced team with Hendrick Motorsports, which is one of the best in terms of restrictor plate tracks. But again, he's still a rookie. He's not going to have much experience leading laps out there, and especially when his teammates have been actually stronger in terms of the races here too, like Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr. I'm expecting them in order to actually go forth past Chase Elliott, and they're going to lead laps more than he does. And as a result, Chase is going to lose positions, and that's going to end up losing points for your fantasy team, and you don't want that.
Engels, is this a race that like a new guy, like a name we don't know is going to win, or is the Daytona 500 traditionally a guy you've heard of?
Well, Trevor Bayne won in 2011. I guess what Nando's asking, Sean, is there a Trevor Bayne in this field? Especially, good question,
right?
Nando,
It's just like traditionally the same names. This is the first big race of the season,
Yeah,
so someone you know is going to win, or is it
someone you know is going to win? But a lot of the top guys may not run up front.
Let me put it this way: someone Sussman and I's name would know.
But the thing is, guys that we know, like Jeff Gordon doesn't race anymore.
Right.
Tony Stewart's not racing, right?
Right.
So
I know Austin Dillon.
I know Austin Dillon.
He touched my computer
right,
once.
I met Austin Dillon.
Yeah.
I know Dale Earnhardt Jr. I know Joey Logano.
Martin Truex.
I don't know who that is.
Yes, Martin Truex Jr. Boulevard, New Jersey. There's
Is he related to
actually a
Martin
Sonic
Garrix?
There you go.
But Sean, is there
Patrick, I know her.
is there a Trevor Bayne who won in 2011?
Is he
Good
related
point,
to
Nando.
Tom Hardy?
Is there a Trevor Bayne in this field who could be the dark horse to win the Daytona 500 and help you win a tournament on DraftKings?
Well, certainly, like I said before, it's some of those lower-priced drivers such as Ryan Blaney, Ty Dillon, Casey Mears. Any one of those guys can just as easily win as some of the bigger names in our sport, too.
Our sport? He's a racer now. All right, Sean, quickly, you got to choose one guy. Who wins the Daytona 500 this weekend?
And why?
And how?
I
And when?
certainly
And
think
where?
it's going to be Hamlin.
Why?
Hamlin's just been really strong in terms of performance throughout restrictor plate tracks. And he doesn't have a Daytona 500 win. He's got a really strong car, especially because he's a part of Gibbs. And I think he's just going to surge throughout the front, work with his teammate Kyle Busch, and they're just going to have this race on lockdown.
All right. He has it on lockdown. Fantasy NASCAR. Check him out at SeanMan247, SEAN. MAN247. His video will be up previewing the Daytona 500. Sean, thanks a lot and enjoy the race.
No problem. You too. Have a good day, guys.
Come on, say I love you, Dad.
Come on!
Come on!
Scott, will you be watching this with your son?
As I do with the
800 laps.
laptops open and the DraftKings live scoring going as we do every week.